This time I'm going to be making what is being called the engine blade from Final Fantasy 15. This one I'm going to be using either foam mats, a little bit of pipe, which is 41mm or 42mm diameter pipe, and a bit of flat beading. Beading is essentially, well, it's this stuff. Just gives the sword a little bit of strength up the middle, so it can take more bending without breaking. Now, the length of this sword I've worked out is going to be 101mm or more, 110 centimeters. 101mm, that's like, yeah, that's tiny. And that's pretty much two of these mats together. So first thing I'm going to do is stick along the zigzag pattern or the jigsaw pattern up between them. If you have a piece of matting that is that big, then very good, yes, that's brilliant for it. But once I've got these stuck together, I'm going to draw the shape onto it and cut it out. Then once I've done that, hopefully I will be able to get a second mat and just be able to cut the second layer off. Once I've got the beading stuck onto the first one, I'm then going to stick the second mat on top, or the second outline on top. But always make sure to have the flat side facing out, not this stuff, that side, because that side would just look terrible as the outside of a sword. I mean, a lot of work to correct. So hopefully once I've got this all done. Also, I do mine from reference. I use reference pictures, then just do some markings to the. I work out the scale of each part, and then I just draw lines on it, and then just draw the shape of it in general, and then work from that. So I use very few drawings for this. So I'll try to get some scale pictures up and just put a scale on a picture of it. I now have the basic shape cut out as such. Now when I make the second, I mirrored it across, so I in fact now have two to stick together. And now just have to get the beading. Now to get this to length, I just put it along the length of the sword like that, and just mark it and cut it. It's easy enough, but then I'm going to stick this on, going gradually down the length of the sword, just one little bit, one bit, because I'm using hot glue. I don't want it to dry off too fast, and I want to get a good grip, I want to get a good seal on it at least. On the actual edges, I'm going to, and the one underneath is actually a little bigger, so I'm going to have to cut that just down to the right size so the top and bottom match. But then on the sides, I'm going to put the glue on, then very tightly bind it with the masking tape. Again, it takes ages to remove it at the end, but it means it gets a good seal and holds together well. I started that ages ago because I was lazy, and it just works really well as a technique, so I figured to keep it going. So then but before I do that, I'm going to get this section here, which is the, grip or the motor section, and I'm going to have to double that out again. So I'm going to have to cut this section again just to build it out. Then that's because the thickness of the engine, or the bore of, the bore of the piston, but you know. Then after I've done that, they're going to get stuck on top, but I'm going to stick them on once I've got this in the centre. So that's the sections that are up next. Right, I have the sword drying at the moment, as you can see by all the tape. I've got the extra two little bits for detailing there and there, and that's all done. So this now, I'm going to start on the engine, which I have this bit, which is 34mm pipe. It's just drain pipe really. I'm going to get this, and I'm going to use 5mm foam core for the fins across it. So I'm just going to cut a rectangle of foam core and then do a curved edge to it, or curved edges on the corners. Then I'm just going to have one of them, a 5mm gap, another one, 5mm gap, another one, 5mm gap, and just make it about 5 layers thick, just so it's got the cooling fins on it. And then make it so it fits into this gap in the sword. So it goes on like that and makes, well, the engine part. At the moment you can see this, or this bit, still, you can clearly see, if we hold it closer at least, that there's the gap and there's the wood inside. Now I wrap my handles, so it doesn't matter if you can see that at this point. But if I'd made it any thicker to hide the wood, you wouldn't be able to get your hand on it properly. And that's not the most comfortable of grips, but it'll work for the users somewhat, at least, for conventions. So I'll have this engine bit made. Also the dome bit over the door, sorry, no, the piston head, no, not the piston head, that's the bit that goes inside, okay. The head of the engine is right. Last time my battery died when I was trying to explain. So this is the engine section. Now this is just literally 5mm foam core with a 5mm gap between each of the sections. And this here is just a section of foam core with bits going up and a bit of craft foam over the top, these little bits on for exhaust port details. Now of course this slides over the top of that and holds on to make it the engine section. Now I've made this removable because I left this wire inside when I was sticking it together. Now I've decided to make this the little bit that spikes back off that illuminated, so I'm going to put an LED on the end of that, put a battery up here which is held inside the engine, so you know it just looks better. Then after that I added on the outer layers like this. I'm sorry my battery died, but I couldn't film while I was doing it, so I just carried on making. The blade itself, I went at this with a bench grinder. Now if you don't have a bench grinder, you can do this with a file. If you do a particularly rough file, it'll be quicker, and then you go over with some like a less sharp or less rough file, and then it'll like thin it off and look better at the end. But I bought myself a grinder ages ago to deal with this particular problem, and then that gives it the edge. Now I've left it a good centimetre or so on the edge, on the cutting edge, because I don't want it actually cutting anything, so that'll get me kicked out of shows. Now again, I haven't changed anything on the handle. This section here, I've just stuck an extra layer of EVA foam on, and then gone at it with a one of these, it's a rotary tool, and I just cut into that. I also did these bits of detailing here for the what I assume are supposed to be exhausts, but we all know an engine exhausts through the top as well as having an inlet through the top. And then the writing on the blade I also did with the engraving tool. This side I did a lot better on because I'd already planned it out, because that's my first attempt. Again, you always make progress while you're working. I then filed off the edges around there and stuff like that. Now I'm done with that, I'm going to stick on the engine section, which I'm just going to put hot glue around there and press in shape with the cables going up the middle. And then I'm going to glue around it just to make sure it actually sticks properly. But yeah, that's about it for this section. Then once I'm done with that, it's pretty much ready for painting, because I'm going to stick this bit on afterwards with the LED in it. I might run the wires up and aim the LED downwards, but I can't really do anything about it right now. I might also do a little bit of like filing on this section because it just doesn't look good enough, but beyond that. I now have my blade back from painting. As you can see, it's now silver all over. Now I'm going to add a little LED up at the top bit by here, and for the bit that's pointing back that's going to be illuminated, I'm going to be using this, which is the bottom cut off of a cup, to be fair. It's just a cheap plastic cup. I cut through it with a soldering iron, but I don't advise using a soldering iron that you're actually going to use for soldering for it, because it'll ruin the iron. So I'm just cutting the bits of wire I took out, I put in earlier, and then just tinning the ends with solder, Tinning is just putting a bit of solder on, so it just sticks on better, or just solders together better. I'm going to do that to both the red and the black. Then I'm going to take an LED. Again, you can't see that because it's too small, obviously, on that camera. But it's just an ultra bright blue LED, which is going to be aimed up this bit, which is clear, so this bit will glow. The battery, I'm just going to get a connector for a 9-volt battery and stick a resistor in line. For these, I've been using them for a while, and with these particular LEDs, I use a 1K resistor with a 9-volt battery, and they work just fine. I've now stuck the battery in here, and that bit is now lit up. Again, you can just remove the battery by pulling this casing off, so it's not that difficult to get to. But now I'm going to wrap the handle. Of this, I'm going to be using lengths of, this is basically plastic leather. I'm going to stick that and wrap it around the handle. Now this will cover up the fact that the sides are just a big gap, because I didn't want to stick them together because I knew this was coming. So first off, you either get a proper length strip, or like I did, you get 2 shorter strips, and then stick the 2 together because you want them to be one solid piece. Then once you've done this, you then do a section up the handle, about a quarter of the way up, and head up towards the back. Then you wrap around, going over that starting section, so it's actually, so the compression of your hands on it and any motion will just grip tighter onto it. Then you wrap down to the other end. Then if you have enough, you can wrap all the way back, and then basically lift the last 2 loops and then push it underneath, and then apply lots of hot glue because I use tons of it anyway. Now I have it mostly constructed, and the handle's now wrapped. Now all I need to do is add some extra detailing around here. For that, I'm just going to use black acrylic paint, which is basically this section here. Just needs some acrylic paint on it to do some detail on it, and then probably paint inside those rings just to make them stand out a little more, and any other little bits that I need to do. But then I'll be done. So nearly there. Okay, I've now finished my engine blade. Now I've done black down the blade, just, it looks better to be fair. And again, when painting, don't go into the text bits or the symbols. Again, you can see I was practicing on one side, and I did much better on the second one because I was used to it. Again, as far as advice goes, I'm not the best with EVA foam, so this is just, again, like my first use of it making a sword. But I would definitely say if you're going to plasti dip the EVA foam, don't plasti dip the foam core as well, because it melts it. I know that may be a little bit obvious, but you know, it did melt it off a little bit around there, or around the engine. You can barely see it, and I mean, if you're walking around with it like that, nobody's going to notice, but I'll always know it's there. And of course, sealing the back of that a little bit better, because you can barely see it, but there's a bit of layering between. You can, well, there's quite a bit of layering there that you can still see. But again, just turn it off, you just pop that out, and then pull the battery off, and it turns off. So again, there you go, it's one sword.